Hello and welcome to Meet Our Makers, an artist interview podcast produced in association with Beats Per Minute. I'm your host, Jeremy J. Fissette. On this episode, we get to meet singer, songwriter, producer, multi-instrumentalist, Patrick Wolf. Patrick has just released his first new record of new material in 14 years, the last one being 2011's Lupercalia. And while he did release an EP a couple years ago, this is the first time we're getting a brand new album of his since then. This new one is called Crying the Neck, and while that is sort of an archaic phrase, we do get into the origin of it and the symbolism of it for him. But we talk about this record as a whole quite a bit. It means a lot to Patrick right now, not only because it was largely inspired by the unfortunate passing of his mother a few years back, but even just the fact that it exists is kind of cause for celebration, because it does follow on the heels of this massive absence of his from the music industry. And this moment for him weighs pretty heavily because of that and because of just how excited he is to be back and to be happy and to be healthy. We talk a little bit about what was going down in the interim and just kind of what led him to coming back, including more than one sort of chance kismet moments that really drove him back to where he is now. And we're very happy that he's here, and he seems excited to stay here. So thank you for listening. I was very excited to meet Patrick Wolf. All right. Well, hi, Patrick. How are you?
I am okay. I have real trouble answering that question, like without getting existential. I don't know. I'm reading too much Michel Foucault at the moment. or I'm in my absurdist phase as well. So I find it really hard to. I think I just finished an in-store show in Nottingham, so I'm on an in-store tour. If that helps, maybe a better idea of where I am. It's like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
I just drove back from the in-store, and I'm staying in a little cottage in the Sherwood Forest, actually, which is it is very, very peaceful, very beautiful. I have no idea how I am, to be honest. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if anyone does right now.
Yeah.
But things in general for you are going okay.
I think they are. I think
Okay.
that I can sleep at night and I can wake up bright in the morning, and more than I ever remember, releasing an album doesn't feel like the end of the world anymore, or the apocalypse element of releasing an album just doesn't really exist in my life anymore, which I don't know if it's to do with the team I have around me, or I'm pretty sure the suspect is sobriety, really, and just being able to just deal with everything naturally, really, and without the drama of everything, and the heightened the height and the pitfall of everything really being exaggerated. So
yeah.
So it's a very peaceful week for me. Very, very encouraging, very peaceful, and very. I just feel like I'm ready to get on to the next album. Really, yeah.
Yeah.
Feel productive.
And that must feel good after some time away. I mean, we're talking about your new record, Crying the Neck, which is out now, just came out. It's been almost 15 years since the last record of new material.
Yeah.
I know there was the Reworkings album in between, but even that was about 13 years ago. So it has been, it's been a while. I know we got the EP a couple years ago, which felt sort of like a slightly surprising, I guess, because we never knew what to expect from you or when. But the EP was sort of this nice reintroduction, and now we're back with a full, almost hour-long record of new material. I mean, how does it feel to have a studio record out now after this sort of long break?
I don't know why the first thing that came to mind was at the signing today. This girl said to me, "Oh, your work has been in my life since the first album," and and she must have only been about 35 or something. So she discovered lycanthropy when she was 15,
Yeah.
and she said, "Oh, your work has been has been with me in every chapter of my life." And I thought, my God, she was talking about this one as if it's like as if that gap hasn't doesn't exist, that there's like this, that I'm still there with her, and this is the next chapter of her life. And that was my intention when I was starting out, was to, because I saw Joni Mitchell do
Mm-hmm.
that with her life, and I could almost read her version of events, of her life and experience and her romances, and I wanted to do that. And so that there was a lot of shame as a writer and guilt that period of time I was because I was mentally unable and physically too unable to continue that life mission. And as the time drew on, that shame and guilt became. I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to get over it, really, and
Mm.
but this it feels very strange, but as if I really have not missed a beat, really. And when I'm coming back to sing to people, or that girl says, you've been with me every step. She didn't say apart from the last 10 years. It was almost
Right.
like as if this album does the job of being that chapter. It's just a 10-year long chapter, really. So I feel like I'm back in a path I've continued, a path I wanted to continue on, and I wasn't sure if I was still on it. But it's like really comforting to know I never really, even in that 10, 12, 13 years, like I was actually still on the same path. I just hadn't got around to stopping and sharing really yet.
Yeah. That's such a lovely sentiment to hear, probably, especially, I would imagine after a long break, there's at least a little bit of nerves with returning. And then to hear that kind of comment must be very touching.
It is, yeah, it is. No one seems to be complaining of the time away. Everyone's happy that I'm in. I think maybe people had seen some quite dodgy shows, or me not on my best form, or me not looking well, or I think maybe that everybody just seems very happy that this is the first step officially back with this record and with this energy and with this even the way things look, that everything just feels like, well, I'm so glad I didn't release anything during that period of abandon, really, because this seems to um um yeah, I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. It's just it's a lot to take in, and I'm really enjoying talking to people after during release week. It's been really, I get a lot of messages like this of encouragement, and that I never really went away in their lives. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, speaking as a massive Joanna Newsom fan, I understand the gap, the waiting. I
yeah,
understand the
sure,
waiting for records. And we're never mad. We're not mad. No one's mad. So that's
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
But how far back do you think roughly we have to go to see the germination of what became this album?
Oh,
Roughly.
yeah. It would.
I mean, were
I
these
mean,
songs in the works when the EP came out?
the one song that really I knew was the beginning of an album was Jupiter, and I was just thinking that the song Limbo, that had been lots of different versions. It had been like Limbo might have been emotionally like the first time I started talking about the abyss that I was in, and being right at the bottom
Mm-hmm.
of the barrel, really. And but it wasn't a really relationship song. It was very angry, and it was very it's definitely it became adopted onto the album, because I realized there are elements of it that I could bring on to the album. But so that's so there are. I mean, if you look at Revolver as well, that the programming you hear on that, was made on an Atari when I was 16 years old. So we're looking at 1999. Was when that part was made. So there are elements that go back to, I guess, as old as 1999 in being 16, but in terms of what was the cornerstone, what was the foundation stone of the album, would be definitely Jupiter, because it's in a way, it's, I just imagined this boy looking out in a town called, originally it was about a town called Jupiter, a town that had lost its industry and had lost its and that there was a lyric in there about the English ivy beleaguering the dovecote, and lots of abandoned buildings, but the boy staring out and in Jupiter, looking for Jupiter, and I think that image of this boy or his friends had left or emigrated to different towns or to different industries, and the aftermath of an industrial of a town abandoned of its industry. I think, of course, let's get psychotherapy on that metaphor. It worked so much for it just was the beginning of a story for me that I realized after. The Crying the Neck album is a series of responses to decay and loss, and decay of the country, decay of the spirit, decay of the flesh of your mother, but Jupiter really was a central part of that. Strangely enough, I've been wearing this Corn of Children of the Corn T-shirt the whole of this in-store tour, and I knew I couldn't enter like record stores with wearing like kind of the drama of what I wear on stage. So I was like, I'm going to get a collection of T-shirts that reference the album. So they all had to have like the Reaper on or something, or like the Seal of Jupiter or Astaroth, which is in demonology. So, but I was wearing the Children of the Corn t-shirt, and I realized I hadn't seen it in 20 years, and then I put it on last night here in the forest, and I was like, oh my god, this is Jupiter, this town, this is actually quite maybe like maybe of an American town I was thinking of, and so yeah, that kind of like nowhere town. And I think from there I was able to put my mother in there, and the loss and the decay and everything fell into place around that song. And I specifically kept that off the Night Safari. It was while I was trying to get back into the music industry. I had a few of the songs finished from the Night Safari, and I had Jupiter, and everybody picked up on that as a very special song. And I said, yeah, it's special in the way that it's not going to be on this EP, and I'm going to make an album around it.
Yeah. So then, what at the end of this break that we've talked about, like what sort of was there like a moment, or was there sort of a series of moments that felt like they compelled you to officially come back to recording and releasing music?
Well, I mean, one of them was a live engineer that I had worked with called Brendan Cox, and he had done a few shows for me during this whole period where I was kind of, the only links to the music industry I had was a booking agent who booked me shows to give me a few grand every few months to live off, so I wasn't completely destitute. But Brendan would do those shows, and he then set up a studio in London, and he kept on saying, "Look, have you got any work finished? Like, come to my studio, and we'll finish stuff off." I was like, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, sure. And he kind of was really persistent, and to the point where I sold my flat in London, and I think made like about £5,000 profit off it or something, and the only thing I could think of to spend that money on was Brendan, because he's the only person that called me for 2-3 years, and he was like, and I put some money down, and we finished the Night Safari. But I did get a sense of like the years were just going by, and there was no, like, to be honest, there was no real kick inside to get back to work or into the public eye. There was a ring on the phone from Brendan, and that was kind of it. And I disconnected from social media, so I didn't really know how people, I didn't realize in the time that I had gone, that was basically there was one post on my Instagram that became a kind of missing board, like, where is he? What's happened? And I just kind of thought people didn't care, and I didn't either. And it was actually coming up to then realizing that my first EP would have been 20 years ago, and then there was this weird cusp of two anniversaries of realizing I was coming up to the 20 years of the release of my first EP and 10 years since I'd released anything. And I was like, well, if I'm going to make anything of these numerals and this kind of message from time, then now is that moment. And I would say it was trying not to lose that moment in time, and of the 10 and the 20 years, and then Brendan being really persistent of saying, come, I'll operate as an engineer and we'll mix this and think about what happens later. And actually, very strangely, as I finished the EP, I moved down to Ramsgate, which is a town and with no music industry contacts at all, and went to a Christmas party of a singer called Nadine Shah, who lived at the end of my road, actually.
Yeah.
And we were the only two musicians, like singer songwriters. Well, she was the only person in the music industry I knew anywhere outside of London, and she lived at the end of my road. And she said, "What have you been doing this year? When are we going to hear something?" And I said, "I've just finished an EP, but I have absolutely no idea in terms of like how to release it anymore. I don't have a manager. I don't have anything." She said, "Well, my manager's looking for a new artist, and why don't you send her the demos?" And so I had sent her the finished EP, actually, because I just finished it and paid for it. And that was really the beginning of getting back into the music industry, was this Christmas party where, because I did leave London thinking, what the hell have I just done? Because I'm leaving London to the end of England with no music industry contacts, just finished an EP, like, what's going to happen next? And it all really, I do believe sometimes if you make the work, then everything else will fall into place. And that's really what happened with this. It's the same way, first thing with my first EP, I finished it and then I bumped into this person or that person, and suddenly I had released an album. So I think there's a magnetism to finished work. I do think people should just finish it and see what happens. So
Yeah, that's like a real kismet sort of moment.
It was very, very strange. Yeah. Very strange.
And big ups to Nadine Shah for
yeah, completely.
We love her.
Yeah.
She's great. So like you it sounds like it was sort of this, like I said, like this sort of kismet-ish thing where different people were like entering your orbit with some kind of, I don't know, clue or like some kind of key, for like you to follow, and then you wound up releasing the EP. And then the record. So how thematically linked is Night Safari to Crying the Neck?
I would say not at all, actually.
Okay.
Maybe like chronologically, it was the Night Safari is like this really specific period of I would say before recovery and before asking for help. Was when I was trying to do everything on my own. Nowhere Game is really like, the moment before a rock bottom and not acknowledgement of other people in the vicious cycle of addiction. The Night Safari is hopelessness, really. It's a hopeless song. And Dodonna is me trying to sort out this, pretty clinically terminal issue, on my own by going to an abandoned oracle in Greece, and like rather than actually, seeking medical and professional help, and then Enter the Day is again a kind of anthem of hopelessness on the path to salvation, maybe. But it's for me, it's like almost like a melanoma in a way. It was like a kind of cluster of songs which sounded exactly like kind of the hopelessness before things, or you start to cast light on issues, really, and try and solve the algebra. Really, it is the algebra. I think is the Night Safari EP.
Yeah.
And what it did then was give me the space to then, okay, well, that's one issue kind of touched on, and we can park that issue for now, and that's what I know about that issue for now. And now I can actually start to look at death and loss and decay and the things that I've also experienced, which is what this whole 4 album project is about. The Crying the Neck is the first of my way round the wheel of the year, and
Mm.
this is a way of me being able to make kind of quite solidly thematic, kind of microcosm worlds, and not cross contaminate with different subject matter really. So the but I knew the first thing I needed to write about was to find some way into to the narrative of my mother dying over a period of 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
And was that so? That was one of the driving forces behind this set of songs.
Yeah, I feel like I could not have made the first album since her dying without
Yeah.
it being some form of a tribute. And I think there was I won't give away the theme of each of the consecutive albums that are coming, but I just couldn't like do that in my spirit and soul to come back to that later. And I think it was probably was the most urgent issue to write about for me, because I think grief leaves us wordless, and it leaves us without the ability uh, to share what we're feeling, and to investigate what we're feeling, and to transform it into something that's maybe easier to live with, and so that was why it was important to get writing and to kind of get forensic over that period of time. Yeah.
Yeah. How much time passed between her loss and kind of you realizing you were starting to write a record?
Yeah, so 2018 is when she passed, and then it wasn't, I'd say, till 2021
Mm.
when I left London. That
Okay.
so 3 years later is when the Night Safari came very quickly, and was finished, and and left space to go, immediate space to start finding the words. And actually, one of the first things I wrote about it was the chorus of the curfew bell, which is now, and when and now all the words leave me. And that was the just had no idea how to explain what I had just experienced or seen or felt. And I wanted to, I always, my viola player on the on our tour bus was asking me, how do you go about writing your first song? And I told her, in the Joni Mitchell biography, it says that the greatest thing she ever learned was her art teacher saying, paint what you know, write what you know. And I was saying, if you put that into context of, like, so you're asking me, how do you write a song, and you don't know how to write a song, why don't you write a song about not knowing how to write a song? Start there. And I found that really useful, like, as my way back into writing. And with this, I was like, well, okay, so I find I've got no words for this, so let's start with the fact that the words left me, and
Yeah.
that was kind of my way back into writing, beginning to attempt that that part of life and experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring up the curfew bell. That was probably one of my favorite songs on the record. The pianos are so gorgeous, and so like grandiose, but like
Mm.
not melodramatically. I don't really quite know how to describe what I'm trying to say. There's like a scale to them that feels there's a lot of heft to those pianos.
Hmm.
But then it ends on a verse that really stood out to me. to the silent room where doors lead to corridors to windowless walls a world away. Where are you?
Mm.
Is that addressed to her?
Well, yes. So my mother was an artist, and her series of paintings that she spent most of her 40s and 50s painting were a series called the Silent Rooms,
Hmm.
and in these paintings there are no windows, there are no the doors lead to other rooms, and those rooms don't have any windows, and it's always like a girl kind of looking over her shoulder, or the narrative is basically still like the mystery died with her, but she called them the silent rooms. So I was contemplating calling the second half of the album the Silent Rooms, and I had thought about it for a long time, like how I was going to make the second half of the album a completely instrumental work,
Hmm.
and then I kind of got my prowess back in terms of like writing and lyricism over this period of time, and I was like, well, so what happens is this, in a way, like that part, the next part with the string section is to me the silent rooms, like
Mm-hmm.
a kind of a form of a requiem. So, but then when I stepped away from that reference, um, really strangely, I'm reading the Bell Jar at the moment, the Sylvia Plath book, and she mentions uh, corridors and windowless. She was talking about the the passage of pain after giving birth, and the girl in labor, she imagines her going down the corridor, the windowless corridors of
Mm.
pain. And so actually, and I thought before reading this, like a few months ago, I thought, well, how would somebody that doesn't know that reference experience that? And I think actually a windowless wall and a corridor to, and it's actually that the doldrums that start to happen, and the lightlessness of grief,
Yeah.
and into that kind of lack of light and lack of air to really to start processing things. So I think it works on many levels, really, apart from, away from the quite idiosyncratic reference, let's say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a very there's a lot of drama to that song, but it feels so rooted,
Yeah,
in,
that
in real human experience. It also feels, to my untrained ears, it feels very sort of old school Tori Amos
okay,
ish.
great. No, I mean, I'm very. That's a real honor, and I actually, when I was finishing off the album, and I was like, okay, what I try to not do is listen to people's albums that have come out during like the time of the album being finished. So
Hmm.
Peter Harvey released an album. I said I can't listen to that. I can't listen to anything what I would return to is albums that I know so well that they wouldn't really have any influence over me now if I listen to them. They're just like old friends. So Boys for Pele was an album that came that I learned to drive last year as well. So I rebought I rebought Boys for Pele on BD, and that was one of my driving albums, and that was like, so I think that, yeah, there is definitely a Tory blood blood type somewhere in my piano playing, probably, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The song is also where we get the title of the record, Crying the Neck.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure it's no surprise that I have no clue what that phrase means.
That's okay.
Um, do
Can I ask
you,
what? Can I ask what do you what when you hear it? What does it? What's your first thought, like when you
well,
think?
okay, so embarrassingly, when I was listening to the record I should say the album because I don't have it physically yet, but when I was listening to the album in my car the other day for the first time and I got to that chorus, I thought you were saying craning the neck. And I thought
Okay.
maybe the title of the album was like you purposely subverting that, but it's not. Um, I really am not
Okay.
sure because when I first saw the news of the record being announced and with that title, I mean, immediately I was like, what does that mean? And in an intrigued way,
Yeah. Well,
it's
I tell
it's an
you,
abstract idea.
I've since I moved to my house, I have a studio at the end of the garden, and it's divided into four regions. Let's say one of them is where I've dedicated to words, and I've been trying to put together a really solid reference library. So like if I decide to throw my phone away, I've got every encyclopedia, the encyclopedia of the occult, encyclopedia of weather, obsolete weather names, or like like just everything that I need in that corner. And so I for this album I went and tried to find as many folkloric and rural and um, geographical reference books in terms of like the nature of England and the history of England and specifically Kent. And so I went to my local city, which is a city called Canterbury, which is hardly a city at all. It's one of those cities that has a cathedral. So in British like by the British law, if you have a cathedral, you've called a city. So
Sure.
I was looking through these books, and I was trying to find more for my library, and I opened this page on rural customs of England, and I just saw in one of the on one of the pages "crying the neck," and it was so strange. I just thought. I remember when I saw the phrase "Wind in the Wires" the first time, and I thought that's the name of my album. And then it turned out that "Wind in the Wires" was a film about a World War II, about the a Spitfire in the World War II, and the sound of the wind going through the wires of a plane, a biplane. So I was prepared for, and of course, my "Wind in the Wires" album has nothing to do with that at all. But I took the phrase from there. "Crying the neck." The first thing I thought when I looked at it, I thought that sums up exactly what it feels, what the kind of cry that you make when somebody has died and the body admits it, and it's like a mixture. It's like a primal scream, like right, and you're crying, but it's also right down there in your throat, like in the same place you would have tonsillitis, like deep in your throat. And I thought, God, like I that sums it up. I've never heard of this before. And then um I looked at the explanation in the encyclopedia, and it said, or the dictionary, and it said, "Crying the neck is a custom that at the end of the harvest, the last farmer so basically the last farmer to complete the harvest in the field, the last one left holds up the neck of the corn, or the straw, and yells out across the fields to let everybody know that the harvest is over. And then they perform a ritual called crying the neck, where it's like a call and response. So actually, if you listen very carefully in the background of the curfew bell, I sing the ritual of the crying the neck, which is I haven't, which sounds a bit like heaven. So I haven't, and then the rest of the people in the field shout like what have you, what have you, what have you, and then the other person, a neck, a neck, a neck, and it's the ritual of the end of the harvest. Now, and I was like, okay, well, I know I'm doing like a harvest. I know I'm entering this kind of period of harvest, but it was that phrase that really made me go balls to the wall with it all, because I was like, my mother's birthday and death was on the week of the Crying the Neck festival. So it just started to all fall together. I was like, so August the 6th, it was her birthday. She died a week later. That's exactly when the Crying the Neck would happen. And so yeah, so I was immediately knew that was my album title. And then it worked on a emotional level for me, and then it worked on a metaphorical level. And then and I like the fact that a lot of people don't know what it is, and and I want to know how people that don't know what it is, that haven't read the my Instagram or whatever. I always fascinated. I remember I had a manager for ages who he did not have much of an imagination, but he just could never. His brain could not work out what "Wind in the Wires" meant. To him, he couldn't work out what it meant to him. And I was like, okay, well, there's a man not in touch with his emotions at all. But I'm always fascinated with what these phrases what they Because there's my meaning and there's your meaning with
Yeah,
songwriting, and I'm always love to know what your meaning is. It doesn't Mine doesn't cross yours out at all.
right. Yeah, I mean, the only association that was coming to mind was like the neck of a river,
Right.
um, which I suppose um, you could symbolize or signify as relating to time passage and
Yeah.
the sort of moving through different phases and but that is interesting. It's like another one of those things that seems to have just sort of revealed itself and then locked in a piece of this puzzle for you to get this record going.
Yeah.
There's
And
there's so many of those.
my big problem with crying the neck as a phrase was that it was, if you Google crying the neck, then it comes up with, this is a custom of Devon and Cornwall. Now, Wind in the Wires was my Cornish album, and I never, I hate repeating myself as a writer, and so I was like, I can't. I was going to call the album The Curfew Bell because it really annoyed me that Google was saying that Crying the Neck was a Cornish thing. I mean, it sounds so stupid, um, but then I went to a local historian called Jeff Doyle, and I asked him, and he was like the absolute expert. He's like the the Dalai Lama of East Kent mythology and folklore. And I asked him, would the Crying of the Neck have been performed in Kent? Because the whole point of this album is my Kentish album.
Hmm.
And he said yes. He said that it definitely, it probably won't be listed anywhere because it survived in Cornwall, but of course that there would have been harvest rituals, and Crying the Neck would have been one of them. So I was very grateful for that as a kind of like blessing of that being a Kentish thing
Hmm.
as well. Yeah,
I mean, for what it's worth, I don't feel like this record sounds like Wind in the Wires at
I know.
all.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I know you know.
Yeah,
But like you got me thinking about, you mentioned PJ Harvey. She's another artist who actively seems to avoid repeating herself.
mm,
Um, but her new record that you mentioned that came out a couple years ago is a Dorset record,
yes.
as sort of
Oh,
is White Chalk,
yeah, well, this
but
is
they
her.
don't
This
sound
is her
alike at
native.
all.
Yeah, that is her native
Yeah.
world. I mean, I, I I definitely felt sometimes after Wind in the Wires like a bit of guilt for making a Cornish album and not being from there. I mean, it sounds, but I had a lover in Cornwall, so like he kind of like it was a big affair for me at that time. So my
Hmm.
my heart was over there, and I spent a lot of time over there. But
Hmm.
I do think there are definite uh, there's a definite sibling energy between Wind in the Wires and Crying the Neck. Maybe not sonically, but I
Yeah.
think lyrically, because they're the two albums that deal with the land and the sea, and both are very rooted in the rhythm of nature. Definitely,
Hmm.
yeah. Outside, like Lupicalia is an urban record, and I actually found when I put together the tour, the set list, that The Bachelor was actually kind of sitting there as the kind of like drunk cousin of Wind in the Wires and Crying the Neck. They're kind of my rural records.
Hmm. That's so interesting. I mean, you do have quite an arsenal of songs to pull from for set lists, so it's nice
Yeah,
to
my
see
shows.
the. What'd you say?
I say my shows are getting on 2 hours now, so like, yeah, it's a lot.
Whatever.
I know, my
You
poor
do.
voice though.
Yeah, I suppose it's true. Um, we mentioned earlier. We mentioned the song "Limbo,"
Mm,
which features one of my favorite people, Zola Jesus.
yeah.
I messaged her when that single came out because I interviewed her on the show a few years ago.
Mhm.
And she's so lovely and funny and smart and so fun to talk to. And so I
Yeah,
messaged
so
her.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I messaged her when this came out, and she said that it was like a teenage dream come true that she got to work with you. Um, how did this collaboration even come about? I mean, who reached out to who here?
I reached out to her. I mean, I was actually really nervous asking her because I feel like she has such a um, a beautifully crafted, severe, severe in like as a good word, world, which is like, from that's, it's sometimes it's quite, to ask somebody to leave their world and come into yours, that so it's like it feels like, it felt like it might be impossible, like it might not work, and she might not like the song, and I was scared of asking her, really, because yeah, I didn't want the rejection of that, but I had to, like, there was just a point where I realized it couldn't really be anybody else, and I had I knew it needed to be somebody my age, or young, same generation, or same
Yeah.
um, that we were like equal, in that. So there wasn't like a huge, there had to be a sense of twinship there, of like, because I wasn't trying to drive down the narrative of a heterosexual relationship by any means, like it's and I did look at male singers, and I thought, because it was about my partner at the time, and me, and I thought, well, but there are no male singers that would really work with my voice on this. That the other male singers I like have like very deep baritone voices, so it just wouldn't really work. And then so it was a real, like, she was my first thought, and then I went through a process of elimination, and then she was my last thought as well. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to, and then I was like, because I just emailed after I went running, and I listened to Conatus, and there was a note that she hit on one of the songs that was exactly the cadence of the chorus of Limbo, of this kind of the slide, and I was like, okay, this is my sign. Email message, and we had been, the thing is, we've been in contact since Stridulum, when
Oh, wow.
I remember Lupercalia came out, and I was so sugared out by my life, my album. Like, it was just so, it was so, the front cover was so clean and white, and everything was just this kind of like serene, like afterlife world of like, and I just needed some darkness. Like, I just had to, that album came out, and I just was like, this is exactly what I need. I just was in a dark room, hiding from the major label, just listening to Stridulum, and just feeling very safe with that album. And it was the only thing I played for a long time. And then randomly, I think I remember, like, tweeting something like, my name, just probably drunk at like 3 a.m, just writing in capital letters, my name is Tristan. And then she replied, and I am alive, at 3 a.m
Oh, wow.
on Twitter in capital letters. And I was like, oh, I had no idea that she knew my work, and I was like really blown away, because there aren't that many people that actually come out and bat for me. Like, there are people that have told me that and have mentioned sometimes in press, like, oh, this album was a really big influence on me, or whatever. But no one, like, for some reason, is like, oh, no, everyone kind of keeps their influence or love for me a bit private. And but she was like, balls out, like, here, I'm a fan and supporter, and like in public. And I was like, I always really remembered that. And then we had tried to meet up a few times, when I was staying in Los Angeles, and our paths never crossed. And I always felt like, I always just was really grateful that, like, when I started emerging again, that that I had a message from her saying, like, I'm really proud of hearing about your sobriety and clean time, and, like, I just felt like very encouraged by her. And I kept that in my heart. You remember the people that keep an eye out for you, and
Yeah.
and they might not even realize they're doing it, but but so few people are actually there when you're a little bit lost, or making your way vulnerably back into work, and she was one of them. And I just thought, well, this would be spiritually a perfect duet for both of us. So I had again an immediate response that she would love to do it. And then And I thought, well, and I said, it's a kind of like Nancy Lee Hazelwood, Nancy Sinatra, demented goth duet. And she's like, perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really happy that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like you two are sort of, there is some sort of, I don't know what it would be, some kind of stylistic crossover, I think, between you guys. Because even though your work sounds quite different, I'm not surprised that your paths crossed and that they crossed both professionally and emotionally and personally.
Mm.
She also has decamped out into remote Wisconsin with her dogs. Like, she,
Yes,
like
but that was another
she,
thing. It was actually part of my reason of thinking like we seem to have pretty similar I would say life choices, or like
yeah,
we need we it's almost like we both kind of I registered that we had both taken maybe a similar escape route to a safer place within the music industry, to operate from.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about when she was on was sort of her sort of flirtations with the pop music machine and how she got kind of close and then was like, no, never mind.
Yeah.
It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, I always um love it when somebody like so and I know with me as well, when I say, oh, this was my pop music era, and to most people they'd be like, what? That
Yeah,
was your that was that was your and then when she was telling me about like that album was her pop music, and I was like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I
It's like when Björk
love
came out and was
just
like, Volta's my pop album. And we're like,
I
okay.
love that. I know that I think in the Magic Position is actually what I realized that it's a really strange album, and like it's and but in my head that was my pop music era. It's like, okay, Patrick, like what do you know what I mean? What actual pop music is, and being a pop star is. It's like it's very anodyne. So.
Um, Another collaborator of yours that I feel like I just saw you post about recently is Tilda Swinton,
Oh yeah,
who's another one of my favorite living people. Um, am I correct in thinking that you first worked together on The Bachelor?
yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Yes. So
Um, yeah, how did you two meet?
that was I was finishing off The Bachelor in a studio in Brixton in southwest London, and I had the version of Theseus with the full string section, and it was basically like a finished production. And I mean, Theseus is, I think, a really beautiful like arrangement. The string section, it was sounding really incredible, but I had I had this idea on the album that though it was just really the album was missing one level of um, mysticism, I would say, perhaps, and
Hmm.
that there had been strange things like I was obsessed with the fact that my grandparents, who died when I was really young, that they were trying to visit me and give me messages, and um, you know there are things like late one night when I was like crying on my way home, this like old woman like appeared on the hill, coming down as I was going up near this block of flats that I lived in. She just said to me, "Just a little further, boy. You'll be home soon enough." And then there was like a visitation, and that made me cry even more because I thought my grandmother's visiting me. It was a time when I was really in a lot of distress after the Magic Position, and there were all these like, and I just thought of like this kind of other voice, like that. I guess she would that lady was my inspiration of this voice that just appears and gives you like a kind of I imaginatively lol called called it the voice of hope, and it's very on the nose. I was only 26 when I wrote it, but I would call it something a lot more interesting now. But it does the job. She was the voice of hope, and that's what I wrote for her.
Hmm.
but I didn't have any. Basically, I had that idea of having a voice of hope, and I saw just opposite the studio that there was a Q&A of her film Julia
Hmm.
happening,
It's a great
and
film.
yeah, and I asked my engineer if he could burn me a CD, and I bought a ticket to the Q&A, and then okay, um gave her in the Q&A, gave her my CD and said, would you be interested in being um the narrator of the album? And there were three parts for the Voice of Hope. And then the next morning, I had an email saying yes.
Oh,
And
wow.
when can I come to the studio? So, which was a mind blowing and exciting moment. And so it happened very quickly, almost overnight. And that was that was how it happened. But I mean, I wonder whether in the press I had talked a lot about how influential Orlando was to me, and probably I was one of probably the only musicians talking about Derek Jarman at the time in the press, and
Sure, yeah.
so maybe she had picked up on her antennae that what I had been saying or championing, or that there was a sense of like of long lost family, maybe to the path that I had, the kind of my background with performance art and the way I'd been raised and the films I'd been raised on, and it was a bit of a cultural desert back then. So there's not many people would be talking about Jarman and things like that in the press, and maybe that's why she might have known. Like there was maybe a bit of a shortcut there,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a really beautiful thing. And then now on this,
Yeah. Tell us about what it is now.
yeah, so basically at the end of the Night Safari tour, um, this filmmaker who had just had this film about a isolated sheep farmer, on like all over our TVs at the time, and he was winning a lot of awards for it. And he approached me and my manager saying, "I've just read this article in the Guardian, which is an article which was my first, like in a way, a confession, like of like what happened in those 10 years." And it was quite an in-depth article, an interview, and it did paint, this picture of this kind of, I guess, probably quite interesting narrative for Christian, the filmmaker, that he said when he read the interview that it looked like a film to him, and he was wondering whether we could look at the narrative of that of that interview and turn it into a documentary. And then it turned into a thing where I was just about to turn 40. So he decided to film me for the whole of my 40th year and then look at my garden over the different seasons, um, and and see me building my studio down out in Ramsgate by the sea. And so he filmed, and as that was going on, he basically asked me to stop talking, and and I was like, well, okay, well, what's happening? What is this film? He said, we're going to film as much as possible, but then we're going to do everything as a voiceover, as narration. And then as the year went on, he then said, why don't the only person who's been spoken word on any of your albums in your world is Tilda. Should we ask if she wants to reprise the role, and wants
Oh.
to do the voice of hope or whatever, and I was like, okay, like and I almost didn't want to ask for a favor twice, but not that the first time was a favor, but I always felt like it was such a huge deal at the time. I felt like lightning only strikes once, and you
Yeah.
don't want to ask for it again, but it was an immediate yes, and then so it was only meant to be a short film, right? So and then as the year went on, he suddenly realized he had like hours and hours, probably 100 hours of footage of me over a period of a year. My dad handed over 40 hours of footage of me from the age of like 2 to 15, and then a load of people in London, from when I had first started out, gave their footage in, which was, I mean, footage of my first ever show when I was 16 in London, and footage of, I mean, a lot of my first band. And then I handed over a box of 40 DV tapes, everything from the tour I did with Amy Winehouse through to the making of each album. And because, I'd been asked by my management to film as much as possible and make kind of YouTube blogs, but you only ended up using a tiny bit. So basically he had 200 hours of footage by
Oh,
the
wow.
time, and 16 minutes. And then we went with 16 minutes to as a format, as a short film. Then I went up to Edinburgh to start recording the narration with Tilda, and it turned into what was meant to be half an hour into a 6-hour conversation about my life and my work, and it was a conversation. It wasn't like just an interview, and we came up and we explored a lot of subjects together, and it became quite deep and poetic, and unexpectedly so. He went back to the BFI who were funding this short film, and he said, "I have no idea what to do. There's no way this can be a short film." And they said, "Well, from what we've seen, it needs to be a feature film." And that was that. Basically, they unlocked a next level of support and funding to turn it into a feature length film. And then Tilda came on as executive producer of the film.
Oh, wow.
And then so that's being all in post production right now. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Terrifying.
Yeah. But did you have any inkling of anticipation of any of this that's happening even like 5 or 6 years ago?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
My idea was to, the one thing I would pray for was opportunity again. And there was a time in my life back in when I was 17 and 18 is that, I used to just turn a corner and suddenly I had a photo shoot. I used to get on my bicycle and then suddenly get off it. And then suddenly I had a record deal. Like, it was just this really weird time of my life where just things, and then 3 years later I was on a major. Things just happened in my life that just, one thing after another,
Yeah.
and then during that 10 years, nothing, there was no opportunity, no good, just bad luck after bad luck, to the point I thought I was cursed, nothing good happened. And my one thing I would just, hope for was opportunity again. And so I, and that already began, to be honest, when I sobered up and put my foot forward and released that EP, and everything, everything seems to be, something follows on from something else now, which is a lovely feeling,
Yeah. And, myself, I'm sure I can speak for other people who've been following your work for a while. We're obviously very happy to have you back, but I think we're also very happy that you waited to come back till you were good. And I think because when you just said that interview you did after the gap was sort of the first time you publicly spoke about a lot of what was going on during that time. So we as listeners didn't really know. I mean, you mentioned that Instagram post earlier, right? Like, we didn't really know where you were, what was going on. And I think had you come back sooner and weren't in the place to do so, it's possible that it wouldn't have worked.
Well, the thing is, what I've realized in this last, say, 3 months, since the lead up to releasing an album, that 80% of releasing work is disappointment, and there's no, I'm not calling for sympathy, or this is the reality of releasing music and releasing. I think I'd probably say the same if you were an artist and you've got your gallery show coming up, or it's just so much disappointment, because you have to have an insane amount of faith and love for what you're doing. You have to think it's the best thing in order to finish it, and unless you're incredibly lucky, then the reality does not match up with the passion and love that you have for it in your head, and especially in this economy, in this state of the music industry right now, there's probably even more disappointment in terms of, because there's so few less opportunities for your work, to be seen, to be heard. There are less TV shows, there's less radio stations, there's less publications, there's just tours don't make you a lot of money, so you have to go out and do it for the love of it. There's so much disappointment, and what I have right now is just the ability to digest it and move on and just be okay, well, and be really grateful for a show that has low ticket sales and for everybody that there is there. And then the day after, it's a sold out show, and that's great. But there are, your song doesn't get playlisted on the radio because there's only one radio station in England that does alternative music, and everybody's like crabs in a bucket, like trying to get in the bucket, I think, actually. But there's I'm actually really enjoying the experiencing. I used to find it very painful.
Yeah.
And I used to find it really disencouraging to move on to the next thing. And now my priorities have all changed, and my expectations are so much lower that I actually am just really grateful for the small things that happen, and I'm so happy that was something I worked on before I came back to work, because there's not really much that could stop me moving on to the next project now,
Yeah. I mean, would you consider yourself, I know I asked how you were at the start of this talk, and it was a loaded question.
Yeah.
But would you consider yourself mostly happy and healthy these days?
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, and
That's
healthy.
good.
I'm coming up to 5 years clean and sober this month.
Congratulations.
And which is 5 years is a big deal for me, and constantly learning about that. And of course, within recovery, you're never out of the woods. Or on my album, I say never halloo till you're out of the woods. This is like never think you're healed, or that's when the danger starts. So it's a daily practice that I've physically never been in better condition in my whole life. And I'm excited about the next album and grateful for the one that's just been released. So I guess and I have a home, which is something that I never had during those years. I used to think about it, and I had a house. I had a house, but I didn't have a home but that, as I do now. I have a real sense of belonging in this world right now, which is, so I guess I can't really ask for anything more than that. That's really, if that's my lot, I'm very happy with it. Yeah.
I mean, what more can you ask for?
Yeah.
Well, Crying the Neck, we should reiterate, your new record, your first album of new material in quite some time, and we are very, very happy to have you back, Patrick.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go eat some midnight. It's like midnight.
Yeah, it's so late where you are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick, for chatting with me. This was delightful.
My pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.